Today on CityCast Pittsburgh. 1 year ago this week, Pittsburgh's Chinatown finally got a historic marker. It took 12 years and 4 applications for the state to officially recognize our city's historic Chinatown. That's a couple of blocks on 2nd and 3rd Avenues downtown that were once a bustling area for Chinese-owned businesses and restaurants. To celebrate this well-deserved anniversary, we're revisiting my conversation with Marian Lein. She's the president of the Pittsburgh OCA, to learn more about the history of our very own Chinatown. It's Monday, April 10th. I'm Francesca DeBecco, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about.
I am Marian Lein. My given name is Lian Mei Ling, and that is of a Chinese background. I am Taiwanese by birth, and I came to the United States when I was, barely in elementary school. So I have lots of a child's memory of Taiwan Island, but grew up in Southern California and made it out here to Pittsburgh about 10, 11 years ago now.
I think that Pittsburgh has officially adopted you.
Oh, thank you. That's an honor. That really is, because I know that in this town of historical roots, to be able to say that I'm adopted, that I can wear that marker as a Pittsburgher, that means a lot. So thank you.
Just add that to your list of titles.
All right.
Yes. So what does it mean to you, to finally see this work pay off and to know that the legacy of early Asian Americans in Pittsburgh will live on?
Oh, it's so many things. It's a relief that which should have happened is finally happening.
Yeah.
My regret is that those board members that came before me that started this journey 12 years ago are not alive today. 2 aren't here. Yeah. So there's bittersweet, feelings about that. That yes, we've accomplished, that we feel victorious in beating back, the system that would still have us invisible. So the legacy of our ancestors, right, is at once also fulfilled because we've always been here. It's right. A matter of being recognized and choosing to see us.
Why did this take so long to succeed, to get the state designation? Because like you said, you've been working on this for years.
Can I tell you, Francesca, the first 3 times that we were denied with this application, a comment that came to us was, we realize you really want this marker. What gave it away? And so, unless you can prove to us that you matter, statewide as a significance, you might just go ahead and call a plaque maker and make your own plaque. The only thing
that's not the point, is it? That's not the point.
That's exactly right. And more so, the one thing that, we would say is we had to raise the money for this plaque regardless. So if you did that, they said to us, the one thing you cannot have is the state insignia, right? And I thought, wow, that was the slap on the face that really got me going with, I see. So it's that you choose not to. You're selective about who can be in this space and you call your own. So I would have to prove to you I belong. And so that's what this 4th application was about.
Wow. And you know what? Chinatown is still sort of folkloric. And there's a reason for that. It was sort of this micro city within the city that supported many Chinese immigrants in the late 1800s. Right. And it was devastated by the construction of the Boulevard of the Allies in the 1920s. Looking back, can we say that this was an act of redlining?
Absolutely. In the name of urban renewal, which group shall we sacrifice? right?
Yeah,
We
right.
saw it in the Hill District. We saw what happened there and the devastation that caused. Why I think this is not written into the annals of Pittsburgh history as prominently is undoubtedly because what happens with championing a community is you have to have active live voices. You have to
Yeah,
have individuals of a community that not only care but really can relate, right? And
yeah,
in this particular case, the history of the Chinese in the United States is it's a sad beginning, right? After being brought over to work on the railroads, the country started to experience a recession. And the first group, even though it was less than like 0.5% of all the
uh-huh,
immigrants that were coming in,
yeah,
the Chinese laborers were pointed out to be competition, right, to white
mm,
labor. And so, you have this systemic waves now that are rolling into place from your Chinese Exclusion Act, and the Chinese remain the only group, that was legalized out of the United States
mm,
existence, right?
mhm,
So with the Boulevard of the Allies, coming in, literally stabbing at the heart of Chinatown, with Ross Street ramp coming off, coupled with misogynistic laws, the Chinese population never gets replenished. That
right.
second generation doesn't come into being. It's not to say that there were no women. There were those who came from other cities, right? Chinese women that were able to make it into the neighborhood.
Yeah, and so the construction of the Boulevard of the Allies really forced people to move outside of Pittsburgh,
Yeah,
but it really
scatters
destroyed
them.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, really scattered throughout the city, and I think also it really ruined this sort of epicenter, this culture, this meeting place, a place where they could go shopping or, speak their own language and all of these things that are really important to maintain a community. So, as we know, the last remaining business from the original Chinatown is the Chinatown Inn, which is
Mhm,
owned by the Yi family.
mhm.
It's that building on Third Avenue with the red and green pagoda style entrance. And Marianne, I want to mention as I was reading about this
Yeah.
last year and a little bit more this year, one fun fact that I found that I can't believe I didn't know this as a Pittsburgher was that the restaurant is owned by the family of Ming Na Wen,
That
the
is
actress.
correct.
Yes, the actress who voices my favorite Disney princess, Mulan.
That's right.
Um, so I love that Pittsburgh tie, especially because that was always my favorite movie growing up.
Well, and she's a superhero now on television. So, it
Yes,
doesn't get
yes.
any better for us, right?
Right. Yeah, okay. So I want you to take us back. What was it like for Chinese immigrants living in Pittsburgh during this time?
The Chinese at this time, you must remember, they live in a city that's actually a segregated city, right? So
Right.
the history of Pittsburgh, it was segregated. And so as Chinese, as an Asian population, we were sort of not black and not white. So were
Mhm.
we for those who were able to find a home in Chinatown, and we want to talk about that. Chinatown really was the older part of the city, in a part of the city that was kind of run down. No one wanted, but it was because they couldn't find rental properties anywhere else. The laws at that time declared they would never be able to become American citizens, right? So they would never be more than just Chinese American residents. And
Right.
so to find work, they had to make work, right?
Yeah.
And so in these sort of spaces, you start to understand, how devastating it might be to just tear down even one, let alone a whole block of
Wow.
buildings.
But, it was one of the places where other people of color could actually go and
That's
be
right.
served.
Right. They saw it as, if you're a paying customer, why should I sit there and judge what sorts of backgrounds, that
Yeah.
might be preconceived? But more than that, it's important to understand how many also were living in fear of being
Right.
discovered there, right? So while the census at the time stated 500, we believe it was probably closer to over 1,000. And
Wow.
yeah. So
Wow. That's
yeah,
a
right?
significant difference. Right.
Yeah, so it's at once, you start to understand how big families, those who were lucky enough to create that kind of natural family, how
Mm-hmm.
many were around. And then also, if you don't have the documents, right, that are necessary to exist in the world, it's a very scary space. And
Right.
Chinatown afforded that kind of comfort to those who may not speak the language English, well, let alone navigate, the rules and regulations. And it was doing so well. At one point, it is attracting the Chinese from, and other Asian folks, right, from
Right.
West Virginia, from Ohio, right,
Right.
and so this is the kind of international flavor that this Chinatown had brought.
Right.
We
And that
Yeah.
speaks to, how this is so historically
Yeah.
relevant. And there were sort of these unofficial mayors
Mm. Yeah.
and these community like societies who helped people sort of navigate
Yeah.
the rest of Pittsburgh. So
Yeah.
um, they would help, people deal with their taxes or, maybe go to a doctor's appointment if they didn't speak English. What can you tell us about these unofficial mayors that existed in these communities?
Oh my gosh. I would say we called them mayors, but really they were like the diplomats, right, of the
Right.
time, right? So Chinatown, like the rest of the Chinatowns across the world at the time, it really functioned as in a parallel universe, right?
Hmm.
The Chinese that lived there, worked there, weren't welcomed in any other parts of the city. And so they had no choice but to carve out another existence, one that they could feel safe in, right?
Mhm.
And the other, quite honestly, is they needed the economic opportunities. They need jobs. And so, in that space of the 2 blocks, at one point was 120 hand laundries,
Wow.
16 groceries and little gift stores.
Yeah, yeah, just imagine all of the activity at that time. So, Marianne, what do you think is important for people to know about Pittsburgh's Asian community today?
Yeah. So I want, us to understand that oftentimes we think when we see someone of East Asian, extraction, we automatically jump to, they must be Chinese. We know better now, don't we? That,
Yep,
it's a
yep.
pan Asian experience, and, no less than 30 countries are represented here in Pittsburgh. It's, I'm so blessed to be working with a community that has so much richness to share. And I hope that the city, appreciates, all of that. If only you just have to ask. If you only choose to see it, it's here.
Yeah, yeah. Marianne Lein, president of the Pittsburgh branch of the OCA, thank you so much for joining us today.
It was a great pleasure.
So that was a year ago, and the actual celebration unveiling the historic landmark was rainy, but so much fun. If you want to see the marker up close, you can find it at the Chinatown Inn downtown. While you're there, get some General Tso's tofu. I highly recommend it. And you can always celebrate our city's Asian heritage by stopping by a ton of local businesses and restaurants or getting involved with Marianne and the OCA to better support and advocate for our AAPI neighbors. A little news before you go. Speaking of anniversaries, we've got updates from 2 Pittsburgh institutions, both celebrating their 125th birthdays this year. At the Pittsburgh Zoo, officials sifted through 700 different entries in their baby naming contest to find one to fit their new baby gorilla. They landed on something pretty simple, Charlotte. The contest helped raise nearly $5,000 for animal care. There's a cute video that we'll link in the show notes. And over at Kennywood, the Raging Rapids is coming out of retirement. It's the one with the giant orange tire raft that goes through rough waters and waterfalls. And it had those water guns that Grandma could spray you with at the end. So maybe not the most thrilling ride, but definitely a hit of nostalgia for a bunch of us. But don't be like teenage Francesca and wear jean shorts and have to walk around the rest of the day soaking wet. Why did I always wear jean shorts? Kennywood hasn't announced when the ride will open yet, but the season starts April 22nd. That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, please, and subscribe to our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. I write that and I can land in your inbox every day at 6 a.m. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you then. That's all for today. Why do I stumble?